Hi, I'm Nathan from Skate Loser. Welcome to the channel. I teach about the sport of skateboarding and the community. If you're watching this video, you've either never skated before or haven't skated in a long time. In this video, I'll be explaining in as much detail as possible how you can get from nothing to skating around town and being happy about it. To start off, there are different budgets you can choose from, depending on how much money you're willing to spend and what kind of complete deck you want. $90 to $100 would be the least possible amount you could spend, and it would give you something that works and it just might not last long or be easy to use. I'd say stick with this budget if you're in a really tight spot, but I wouldn't recommend it if you're willing to spend a little bit more on something that would be worth it. $100 to $170 would be a mid-range deck. This budget is probably the best for a beginner who doesn't want to spend a bunch on a sport they're just trying out, but they want a good experience with it. $170 to $500 would be something that a skater who needs very specific portions of their deck to be specific ways for them to skate optimally. I don't recommend going for something as expensive as $500 for your first deck, as you just don't know what you really need yet. If you really want the best you can get for your first deck and have plenty of money to spend, I'd say go with a $200 to $300 budget. And it will definitely get you something that you love. It's just too much to spend on your first board in most people's opinion. I'll go more into what makes up each budget later on in the video. Alright, once you've chosen your price range, you can't just walk into a skate shop with that amount of money and come out with a good deck for you. You need to decide what you want, and I'll go over every part of the skateboard, the prices of them, brand recommendations, and specifics and how they perform. First is the deck. There's lots of different decks out there, but there's really only two things that make one deck different from another. There's the artwork on the deck, which is all up to personal preference, but if you want to save some extra money, I'd just grab a blank deck. And there's the size. All decks are the same length unless you get a customized deck or a longboard or something, but they can have different widths. They typically range from 7.75 inches to 9 inches. Depending on your foot size, the size you need can differ, but generally larger decks are better for just riding around and ollies and shove-its and stuff because there's more room to land on and you're less likely to lose balance. Smaller decks are better for flip tricks because they're lighter so they can pop higher, and being thinner they can flip faster. You're also less likely to land primo, which is when you land on the side of the board. I personally like to skate anywhere from an 8 to an 8.5, and I wear a size 11 in American men's shoes. As for deck brands, it's still generally just the graphic, but there are some brands that can last longer than others. I like Primitive, Passport, or Element personally, mostly just for the graphics. Next up are trucks. This is the metal part of the skateboard that bearings and wheels connect to. There are lots of different kinds of trucks for different things, so knowing what you want to do with them can be important. If you want to pop higher, lighter trucks are definitely good. A good brand for these kinds of trucks are Thunder trucks in my opinion. Thicker and heavier trucks are better for grinding as they can last much longer and typically feel better when you're grinding too. The tightness of your trucks are important too. Tighter trucks are best for beginners I think because it's easier to balance on the board and get a hang of it. I personally like to skate loose trucks though because they can improve your balance much faster and you can make sharper turns. Typically people want the truck size to match their deck, but some people prefer them being a little smaller or a little wider. This is really all up to what you feel most comfortable with when you're grinding. You won't really know until you really get into skating. So if it's your first deck, I recommend going with some mid-sized trucks, or you can ask for a recommendation from someone in the skate shop. A good reliable brand for trucks that you really can't go wrong with is called Independent trucks. I had them on my first deck and they really are pretty good. There are a few other good brands like Thunder I mentioned before, or Venture, but I would still go with Independent over either of these for beginners. Now you've got the bearings. These are the things that go in your wheels to make them spin and ride smoothly. There's not much preference here, only really good or bad. You want your bearings spinning smoothly and quickly so you can have the best possible experience while riding. Some last longer than others and some are prone to rust. I normally always play it safe with Bones Reds bearings. They're the classic go-to bearings that every skater knows about or has used before. They're really reliable, about $30, and they can last you a while. Some people aren't really picky about their bearings though, and honestly, if you don't really mind the small difference between going 10 miles an hour or 9 miles an hour, you can really just grab the cheapest bearings you can get. I really appreciate the more expensive bearings though, because they just make your ride feel so much more smooth but they can really get expensive. If you want to get some ceramics bearings, sometimes you're looking at a few $100s. Bones reds are really my only recommendation for beginners though, as they're really just well rounded for the price. Next up, you've got wheels. There are two things that truly matter when you're picking out wheels: size and hardness. The size of your wheel can determine whether you have a smoother ride against the pavement or have a lighter board in general. Smaller wheels are obviously going to be lighter, so they make good for a park board where you plan on popping a lot. Larger wheels are best for longboards or cruisers because they have more surface area and can ride over bumps in the road or pebbles much easier. The hardness is similar, as softer wheels roll over things easier but are quicker to wear out, whereas harder wheels will give you a better pop and make that satisfying sound when your board lands. Not to mention they last a little bit longer. Some good brands I like to skate for wheels would be Spitfire, which is probably the leading brand for skate wheels, or Bones. That's the same company that makes the bearings I mentioned before. Next, you've got grip tape. Now this doesn't really matter much. You can get plain black grip tape, clear grip tape, so you can put cool stickers under it, or even printed grip tape, which is really cool. There's lots of different designs you can find on them. Again, because it's not very important, I don't really have any brand recommendations, but I know a lot of people who like to skate mob grip tape, so if you want to follow the crowd, that's all I can give you. Last, you've got hardware, which is just the nuts and bolts that hold the trucks to the deck. These honestly don't matter at all for functionality, unless you want to use them to designate the front and back of your board, but otherwise they just add to the aesthetic you want while holding everything together. I don't even know if someone can brand some nuts and bolts, so I've got no recommendations for this one. Once you've decided everything you want in your first skateboard, it's time to go out and buy it. I'd recommend going to a local skate shop because they're a little cheaper than chain places and you can support a local shop. Where I live, there's no skate shops anywhere except for a bunch of Zoomies. Zoomies is the biggest chain skate shop and they sell a bunch of things like clothes and shoes too. A lot of people hate on Zoomies, but honestly, aside from the prices, it's a pretty cool place and not everybody has anywhere else to go. You can always buy things online too, but if you go in a store somewhere, you can tell the employees what you're looking for and they can definitely help you out in case you miss anything. Some skate shops will offer to put everything together for you, which when you're a beginner can be pretty cool. I always like to put together my own decks though because I find it fun and you get to know your board, but not everyone does. Once you've got everything put together, you're done and you can start having fun. I hope you've gotten some kind of entertainment or information from this, even if it wasn't much. Thanks for taking your time to watch this video to the end. If you liked the video, I'd really appreciate it if you give it a like. And if you have the time, go through my channel, see if you like any other videos. If you do, maybe even subscribe. Thank you, I really do appreciate it. Love and peace, good luck skating.